Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
After a series of letdowns, Aaron Orender auditioned for the role of Hamlet, and unfortunately for us, the cameras were rolling.
Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well. To be or not to be, that is the question.
Not bad, but I got a better question for you than that one. How about this? To Roth or not to Roth? Now that's a good question.
Wait a minute. This isn't Yorick. This is Steve. Oh, this guy owes me money.
Thanks, Aaron. We'll let you know.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Of all the devastating and lasting concerns brought to the psyche of hardworking Americans during COVID is the current and even more pronounced uncertainty of our nation's financial future and, of course, how this uncertainty might affect what is in our financial pockets. And just like this question profoundly asked by Hamlet, to be fearful of decisions one will need to make today, created as a result of decisions made by our politicians to dole out money and increase our nation's debt to even more astronomical levels, is it any wonder that more and more advisors, financial pundits, and financial soothsayers are weighing in with their take on what savers should be doing with their money? One of those strategies is the focus of today's show, something called the Roth IRA, a way to voluntarily pay the taxes now on your money rather than waiting to see what the government might do to tax it in the future. Which leads to our show title, To Roth or Not to Roth? That is the question. So, let's get started. Well, welcome folks to the Worry-Free Retirement, and yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, financial truth detector, retirement planning specialist, and fiduciary, Tony Walker. And today, before we dive into the pros and cons of a Roth IRA and whether it is the best way to save on taxes in the future, let me introduce two tax-saving lads who help produce this TV show each week, America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orender, and Louisville, Kentucky's most laid-back graphics artist, Mr. Derek Hudson. Okay, let's set the stage by starting off with the narrative that many in the financial world, including yours truly, are so preoccupied with what the folks in Washington are going to do to try to pay off a growing debt issue in this country, with one of those solutions apparently being that of the Roth IRA. Ironically, a choice given to hardworking savers of paying the taxes owed on your 401k now versus later. To understand why the Roth IRA is being encouraged, we need to only look at the history of the tax rates in this country as we go back in time to the year the 401k was created in 1978, when the average tax rates were at 50%. Which explains why the 401k peddlers convinced Joe Lunchbox to put all of his money into these things by telling Joe Lunchbox he would save taxes since Joe Lunchbox apparently would be in a lower tax bracket down the road, which, as of the date of this recording, with the average tax rate around 22%, the pundits were correct. But therein lies the problem for our friends in Washington and how to pay off all of this debt. Where are they going to get the money when there are only two solutions? First, spend less, or second, tax more. And seeing as though they obviously are not cutting spending, that leaves taxing more of your money, and the best place they could start is, of course, your 401k plan. And if they do decide to raise taxes, what might those taxes be in the future? Well, who knows? Which is why today I'm covering a very important topic for anyone who has a 401k or IRA, and I'm calling this show To Roth or Not to Roth? That is the question. I'm Tony Walker. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement. We'll get right back into this. You stay tuned. I'll be right back. With the uncertainty of the stock market, our nation's debt spiraling out of control, and inflation running rampant, now may be the best time to consider moving your 401k to safer territory. My name is Tony Walker, and for over 38 years I've made it my life's mission to help savers worry less about money, and I want to help you too. To speak with me at no cost or obligation, why don't you log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or simply call the toll-free number on your screen. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. Before we get started, I got to turn to our own Aaron Orender, who knows a lot more about this whole Hamlet thing than I do, for an explanation of what it means and all this nonsense of Hamlet. So take it away, Aaron.
Okay, Tony. So basically in Hamlet, what happens is his father is killed by his uncle. And Hamlet finds this out pretty early on, and he's, the ghost of his father, the ghost of Denmark, tells him, you gotta take revenge for me, son. You gotta kill your uncle. You gotta kill my brother. But there's just a lot of inaction. Hamlet just can't decide what's the best thing to do. How should he go about doing it? Then he decides, well, I'll play a trick on everybody and everything else. And then his uncle, on top of all of this, he finds out this as well, and he starts trying to plot against Hamlet. So it's just a lot of inaction, but not a lot of stuff is going on.
Actually, I'm sorry I asked, Aaron, but thanks anyway. So, with that said, assuming you're like me and concerned as Hamlet might be about the future consequences of our decisions, in this case, whether to do a Roth or not to do a Roth, we must ask ourselves this question. Do you think taxes in the future will be higher or lower? And if so, what, if anything, are you going to do about it? Well, one idea for dealing for what I call the tax tumor was posed to Rick out of Bowling Green recently, who asked, Tony, I recently attended a financial workshop at a local venue where the presenter said he had ways to keep Social Security tax-free even when you take money out of the 401k plan, and he concluded with, how is this possible? Well, Rick, it is possible, but not before Uncle Sam gets his fair share to make it so. I'm going to explain this by diving back into the tax brackets and how we fall into this today and what goes on versus 50 years ago. So again, these are the current tax brackets. As you'll notice here, they start at 10% and go all the way up to 37%. In other words, the more you make, the more they take. So again, if we think through this whole 401k menagerie, what happened back in 1978 when it was created, let's kind of look at what the tax rates were back then. So in this section right in here, the highest marginal rate was around 70% versus 37% now. Now, the average rate was right at 50%. So let's walk through this. What that meant was the corporations had stopped offering pensions. People were trying to figure out how to retire, and they were paying 50 cents out of every dollar was taxed immediately. So then Wall Street, the politicians, the employer, everybody got together and said, hey, look, Joe Lunchbox, why would you want to pay 50 cents in taxes on every dollar you're making? We'll set up a 401k plan. You can postpone those taxes to a point in time where theoretically you'll be in a lower tax bracket. So as we look here in this age range right here, if someone was turning, 65 or whatever in the year 2023, the average tax rate is around 22%. So actually, in theory, for most people, this has worked out. In other words, back in the 70s, 80s, people were in a higher bracket. The brackets have come down. So you're saying, well, Tony, it sounds like it all worked perfectly. Well, we got a problem. Because remember, think about the nation's debt, $31 trillion and climbing, and think about this idea that if this is you right here, regardless of your age, what people are concerned about is possibly, I'm saying possibly, but it really could happen, but possibly these tax rates going back up into the 50, 60, or even 70% range. And you say, well, Tony, could they do that? I'm saying, well, of course they could do it. With a swoop of a pen, they could do it. And you have to remember to pay back all these debts. There's trillions and trillions of dollars in these 401k plans and IRAs and TSPs and 403bs. Folks, none of this money, none of it has been taxed yet. So it'd be a great resource for the government to help pay down this debt. So basically, we're right back to this question. To do a Roth or not to do a Roth? That really is the question. But it's a toughie because you can't just run out and go to a workshop or get on the internet or listen to a radio show or even a TV show like this and say, well, I'm going to do a Roth conversion. I'm going to save taxes. Because as we're going to see, something like a Roth conversion, while again, it has much utility and you need to think about it, has many ramifications of taxes both for income and for your Social Security taxes. So when I return, we're going to actually go through two cases. These are cases that I asked our tax department at Tony Walker Financial to work on. It's going to be very interesting to see one case where the Social Security is not taxed at all with a $30,000 IRA distribution. And then the second case where that same couple says, well, what if we do a Roth conversion? What would be the tax effects not only on our federal taxes, but also state and Social Security taxes? So good stuff coming your way. You stay tuned. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement. I'm Tony Walker. We will be right back.
Hi, this is Jennifer Jaggers, and I'm in charge of processing new business for our annuity department here at Tony Walker Financial. Did you realize that you can purchase a fixed interest annuity while having the interest payments from that annuity sent to you on a monthly basis? With interest rates on the rise, now may be a great time to consider a fixed interest annuity with monthly income. To learn more, contact me at the number listed on your screen. Thank you.
Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. Earlier in the show, we talked about all the negative fallout as a result of the government shutting down our economy and handing out free money, all at the same time. Yet, as someone who likes to see the glasses half full, in retrospect, I tend to think that there were three positive takeaways that came out of this pandemic. First, the book I wrote called Live Well, Die Broke, which serves as a reminder of just how quickly things can change and that you really can't take this stuff with you. It also talks about how to better use and enjoy this money before it's too late. The second positive takeaway is all the new technology we're using to help us save even more money, even every red cent, and magically put that money away. It allows savers to do things they've never been able to do before. Technology like Acorn and Stash, and lest we not forget the convenience of those coin counting machines at our neighborhood supermarkets that conveniently skim off about 12 cents for every dollar we put into them. Derek, I'm trying to do the show. Now what?
Speaking of Coinstar, my dad and I used to collect coins in like a pickle jar that we kept, and then once a year we go to Coinstar and cash it in for like $300. But the pickles and vinegar really gunked up the machine.
As I was saying, the third positive takeaway from COVID is this: that we can't rely on the government to fix all of our problems, something I'm going to get into in detail in our Bible segment coming up. So, like Hamlet, who when faced with a tough decision in life realized that if it is to be, it was up to thee, what can we learn about these darn taxes that we will have to pay and whether we need to pay them now or wait to see what happens? Well, as the old adage goes, that all depends. But to help us think through the effects of these taxes, I asked our own tax planning department at Tony Walker Financial to help us do just that. So what we're going to do here, it gets kind of involved, but we're going to show two different case studies here. Now remember, this is our current tax bracket. I know we talked about it maybe going up in the future and all that. We're not going to look at that now. We just want to imagine that somebody wants to take larger than normal distributions out. That could be just a regular distribution from an IRA or 401k, or we'll see, wants to do a large Roth conversion. So let's see the effects on this. We're going to call this person A and person B. So Aaron, why don't we go full screen? Let me read the specs on this. So we have a male-female married couple age 66. Their standard deduction is $30,700. Remember, most people are not itemizing like they used to be. They're taking their standard deduction. This, again, is a married couple. He has $2,300 a month of Social Security coming in. She has $1,500 a month for a total of $45,600 in Social Security. And they have some interest income of $5,000 per year. And keep in mind, this couple lives in the state of Kentucky, so any distributions from their IRA up to around $31,000 is not subject to state income taxes. Okay, so let's take a look at person A here. This person currently, because of their income, is in a 12% tax bracket, okay? That is very low, especially if you, let's put the old graphic back up here, and I mean, look at how high these taxes have been in the past. I mean, some of them as high as 90%. So this couple, remember, is in a 12% federal tax bracket as of today, pretty low. In this example, the Social Security, because they're only taking a $30,000 IRA distribution out currently, their Social Security is only taxed at 38%. That doesn't mean they're taking 38%. That means that 38% of that, what was that, around $45,000 now has to go onto the income tax return to calculate their tax, all right? Then we look at the taxable income that goes on the tax form. It's only going to create taxes, federal taxes, of about $2,200. That's all. And notice that part of that's in the 10% bracket, and only $3.60 creeps up. That's why we call it creeping up, creeps up into the 12% bracket. So as you look at this, that's not a bad deal. They got Social Security of over $40,000 that year. They took a $30,000 distribution from their IRA. And there's no state taxes because, remember, the distribution stayed under the $31,000 limit, and basically they only owed the government about $2,200 in federal taxes. Pretty darn good. Let's go over to person B. It's actually the same situation. But now person B says, you know what? I went to a workshop recently, and the fellow was talking about Roth conversions. I want to do a Roth conversion. Sounds like a good idea to me. Then when I convert it, all that money will be tax-free. It won't affect Social Security. So I want to do a Roth conversion, and they arbitrarily picked $90,000. Okay, well, let's see what happens and what the effects of taking $90,000 from a tax-infested 401k IRA and converting that to a Roth. So there's the $95,000 IRA distribution. But look what happens. Notice the Social Security, remember over here, $17,000 had to go on the tax return. Now it threw the Social Security up into a higher tax bracket. So now 85% of the $45,000 Social Security, $38,000 has to go on the tax return. This is not looking good. You'll see this. So you have state taxes now come into being. You said, why were state taxes, Tony? Why am I having to pay state taxes? Well, you take $31,000, subtract it from $95,000, and that balance is subject to about 5% in taxes. So they also have state taxes now of $2,800 they didn't have under the first scenario. But it gets worse. We have the 10% bracket, but look at this 12% bracket. Remember on the other scenario, only $3.60 of taxes had to be paid at the 12% bracket, but now they're going to owe over $8,000 at the 12% bracket. But look at this. Because so much money has crept into the 22% bracket, they're going to owe $4,000 in additional federal taxes. So let's summarize this. To do this Roth conversion without any thinking and understanding of the rippling effect of doing so, basically this person went from $2,200 in total taxes paid all the way down to almost, well, just over $20,000 in taxes. So you might look at this and you say, well, Tony, I don't understand what to do here. I mean, the question is, do I do a Roth or not do a Roth? Do I put into a Roth or do I do a Roth conversion? You're not helping me here. Well, folks, that's the whole point. We can help you, but you can't rush out and do this stuff without a knowledgeable retirement planning firm like Tony Walker Financial, who works with this stuff every day. This is all we do. In fact, you know, a lot of people will charge for these services. All of our tax planning services, assuming you're a client of Tony Walker Financial, come to you at no additional out-of-pocket cost. We will do these calculations for you to make sure such situations like this are right for you. So here's my thoughts. If you don't have someone in your corner that knows how to lay this stuff out, who can provide a written game plan, who has salaried fiduciaries on staff and a full service team of professionals that can help see you through retirement, Why not? Let's do this right now. Why don't you go on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to click on that Let's Get Started button. And once you click on that button, your information is confidentially sent to our offices, and we're going to call to arrange what's called a free fiduciary phone call, where you'll talk with me, the owner of the company, to see if we can help you. And then if it merits, I'll be happy, or one of our trained fiduciaries, to meet with you in person at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. So do it now. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or you can simply call the number on your screen. Well, what does the Bible have to say about the government providing solutions to problems that deep down we know they cannot fix? And how, as Christians, can we be confident in our ability to rely on God for our daily provisions that we all need? Good stuff coming your way. Let me get a cup of coffee. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement. I'll be right back.
Tony, I know you recently wrote a best-selling book that's called Live Well, Die Broke. I have to admit, that is not exactly something I would expect to hear from someone who's giving retirement advice.
Well, that catches people off guard because, don't I want to have all kinds of money? The whole purpose of the book was to remind people that you have to spend this money before it's too late. What I've seen over the years is people don't do that, and whether they want to admit it or not, everyone dies broke. What I mean by that is, Diane, you can't take it with you. So it's interesting that people work so hard to save all this money, but nobody's encouraging them to spend it. Now, here's the reason I believe the financial world doesn't want you to spend that money. If you start taking money away that you've saved with the financial world, that's less money for them. That's less commissions, that's less fees, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody makes money on your money if you don't spend it. The moment you start spending and enjoying that money is when you would get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. So if you think about it that way, you've worked hard to spend it, and at some point there'll be a point in time where you can't. A lot of people we have are getting older. They don't spend any money. I mean, we have people spending a couple $1,000 a month, and they come in their 80s and go, Tony, what am I supposed to do with all this money? Well, they couldn't even spend it even if they wanted to. They're not doing traveling and doing a lot of things they did when they're younger. So I think the philosophy is right on. I think it makes complete sense. And when our clients see how that we can make sure they use and enjoy and protect that money, and then show them how they can still use it without running out of money, it's a game changer, and it liberates them to feel like they can enjoy what they've worked so hard to save.
That makes sense. And you're dealing with savers. So that mentality, maybe you're having to mold it a little bit for them.
You're right. A saver, that goes against the grain. They've saved money. They're not good spenders. But we'll make sure they enjoy that money. And again, we'll make sure they spend it without running out of it.
For additional information and scheduling your free, no-obligation appointment, go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement with the money missionary himself, Tony Walker.
So let's assume that you agree with young Hamlet and the decisions we make in life ultimately come down to us. In other words, as the old saying goes, if it is to be, it is up to me. Which begs the question when it comes to you and what it is you want to do with this money before it is too late. What is it you truly want to do in life? Well, that's up to you, whether you wish to buy more things with this money, allow you to retire with it, give more of it to others. Again, why are you working so hard for this money? And then in the end, what is it you really want to do with it? Well, let's remember to start with money's first and main priority. To be sure, we have a little food, a little clothing, and a little shelter. That's about it when you think about it. Don't believe me? Just ask victims of a natural disaster who lose it all. The only thing they can think of is where do we get our next meal and where am I supposed to stay? Two fundamental questions that must be answered. In Philippians 4:12 and 13, Paul said this, I know how to live humbly, and I know how to abound. I am accustomed to any and every situation, to being filled and being hungry, to having plenty and having need. What Paul learned is that through Christ, he could do all things. In other words, whether he had a little or a lot, Paul learned to be content with what God provided. Oh, speaking of living on a daily dose of God's provisions, there's an interesting exchange found in 2 Kings chapter 25, verse 30, where it says a king provided Jehoiakim I hope that's the way you pronounce that.
It's pronounced Jehoiakim, dude.
A daily portion for the rest of his life. To this daily provision provided to a servant by a king, the great writer and theologian Charles Spurgeon says, "We cannot eat or drink or wear more than the day's supply of food and clothing. The surplus gives us the care of storing it and the anxiety of watching against a thief." Jesus in Matthew 6:33 says the same thing by reminding followers to seek first God's kingdom and His righteousness, and all of these things shall be given unto us. What things? Well, the point being, no matter whether you have a little or a lot, the decisions we make are in the end our decisions, and one way or the other, we must do something or do nothing. But either way, we've got to choose one over the other. So here's my advice. The next time you're feeling anxious about your financial future or tempted to follow someone's lead to do something drastically different than the present course you're on, do what my late father said. And it's just basically this: just slow down. And remember that this God of the universe is bigger than any law initiated by Congress and what we as a country are going to do about our debt. No, friend, the main thing for you and I to remember is that in the end, God will provide our daily allowance, and in that we should be content. Amen? Well, speaking of taking care of our basic needs, I've got a question for you. Who is in your financial corner right now, helping you to figure out whether you need to do a Roth conversion or not? Who is there that you can have experience and expertise to rely on to help you figure out how much money you can spend in retirement without the fear of running out of it? Here's another one. Who's in your corner that can tell you whether you can retire now or maybe need to keep working? Well, assuming you don't have anyone like that in your corner, we need to talk. My name is Tony Walker, and I'm the owner of Tony Walker Financial, and I've been doing this for nearly 40 years. I've met in person with over 15,000 savers, and I've personally overseen more than 5,000 written retirement game plans, and I want to see if we can help you. We do this very simply, and it's easy to do, and best of all, it's free. In fact, it's called the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. And here's how easy it is to get started learning more about Tony Walker Financial. Just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, and when you're there, click on that Let's Get Started button, and we can arrange that 10-minute phone call. And of course, if it warrants, we will be happy to meet with you in person at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. Not sure if you want to log on to the internet? No worries, just call the number on your screen. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show, but you remember, between now and next week, if all else fails, you be worry-free and make it a good one.